Randy, my air conditioner just kicked on. Are you hearing a bunch of noise?
I was at first. It sounded like an airplane.
Let me go kick it off.
And then it went off.
Let me go kick it off. Okay, I have 10 after. Hopefully my air conditioner will turn off here in a minute. We'll go ahead and get started. Call to order. Welcome to the January 11th, 2021 meeting of the Shawnee County Planning Commission. Guess this Zoom meeting's new for me, but we'll go ahead and do a roll call and declaration of quorum. Randy or Jolie?
Okay, try again.
Brian Albert.
Here.
Tyler Timbrink.
Here.
Josh Greening.
Here.
Judy Moeller.
Here.
Jake Fisher. Jeanette Johnson.
Here.
Chad Depperschmidt. With 5 members present, there is a quorum.
Okay, I will read the hearing procedure for tonight. It should be up on your screens. Welcome. Your attendance and participation in this hearing is important and ensures a comprehensive scope of review. It is because of the significance of this proceeding that everyone understands the hearing procedure. Each agenda item will be considered as follows. The Planning Department staff will present the staff report and recommendation, followed by questions from the commission. The chairperson will then call for the applicant's presentation, followed by questions from the commission. The chairperson will then call for public comments, first from those speaking in favor and then those speaking in opposition. Each speaker must come to the podium. State your name and address for the record. The chairperson reserves the right to establish a time limit for all speakers. Everyone should have the opportunity to speak and in consideration of other agenda items. At the conclusion of each speaker's comments, the commission will have an opportunity to ask questions. The applicant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal and make concluding comments. The chairperson reserves the right to allow additional testimony from proponents and opponents after all initial comments are made. The chairperson will close the public hearing, at which time no further public comment will be received. Commission members may then discuss the proposal, ask further questions of staff. The chairperson will then call for a motion on the item, which may be cast in the affirmative or negative. Upon a second to the motion, the chairperson will call for a roll call vote in which commission members will then vote yes, no, or abstain. Each agenda item represents a potential change in the manner in which land may be used or developed. Significant to this process is public comment, which affords the commission with the information essential for making a determination. Your cooperation and attendance to the hearing procedure will ensure an orderly meeting and afford the opportunity for all to participate. Please be respectful. Each person's testimony is important regardless of his or her position. All questions and comments shall be directed to the chairperson from the podium and not to the applicant, staff, or audience. Okay, are there any communications or ex parte communications from members of the commission or staff?
I can't hear what you.
No. Are there any declaration of conflict of interest from members of commission or staff with this item?
This is Jeanette Johnson. I am familiar with the the Canfields. They are acquaintances, but I feel like I can still make a good decision.
That relationship won't affect your ruling today.
I don't think so. And I think we forgot the approval of the minutes.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry about that.
That's what I was waiting for.
We'll come back to conflict of interest. I just want to see if there's anybody else that has any, but yes, we will go to approval of the minutes. Excuse me for not being able to read. So we do have minutes from the December 14th, 2020. If everyone's had a chance to read those, I can get a motion to approve.
I shall move. It's Judy.
Okay, Judy, motion to approve.
Jeanette seconds.
Seconded by Jeanette. I guess we'll do a roll call. Seems to be the easiest thing with Zoom.
Brian Albert,
Yes?
Jeanette Johnson,
Yes.
Tyler Tembrink,
Yes.
Judy Muller,
Yes.
Chad Deberschmidt, Jake Fisher, Josh Greening,
Yes.
with 5 in favor. The December 14th minutes are approved.
All right. Minutes are approved. Okay, back to the conflict of interest. I just want to make sure to give anybody time. Does anybody else have any conflict of interest they need to declare? Okay. Seeing none.
This is Jeanette. I probably should say I do know a couple of the people that are on the call, on the meeting. I'm not sure whether they're speaking for or against, but I don't think that would have any bearing on a decision either.
Okay. Okay, we can move on to item number 1. Randy?
Okay, I'm going to be just summarizing what we're looking at tonight. This is a request from the applicant to build essentially a gym on the property for the use of their daughter and her various teams or clubs that she's a member of. Let me change this picture. Property is at the northeast corner of 69th and Auburn in Auburn Township. You see the property before you. It's about a 39 acre property. It's a rural setting. We've talked to many of the neighbors who are to the south and had various opinions of what was going on. We haven't had anybody say they were for or against the request. Just there were general inquiries. So we have heard from people, mainly the people who were due south of the property across 69th Street. Is who the phone calls have come in from. The property, as you see on the site plan, you have about a 9,000 square foot house with adjoining accessory buildings, garages, cabanas, and other things around an outdoor pool in the backyard. The existing 5,000 square foot building is located on the eastern part of the property, and you see the 10,300 square foot building that would be attached to the rear of that building. So the two buildings do make up a fairly good amount of building coverage on the property. We would, before we go past this point, I would add that regardless of the outcome of this project, the owner needs to apply for a permit on the 5,000 square foot building. That was never done when the building was established. I think it was just put up without any kind of permit. So regardless of the outcome, they need to do that to take care of that matter. So the two buildings, when they're combined, that would have an area of 15,300 square feet approximately. The nature of the conditional use permit is to allow the building to be used for recreational purposes for a gym. The applicant has submitted at our request a plan of operation that also indicates how they would use the building. It'd be a basketball court that could be converted into a volleyball court. There would be up to 10 to 15 children at the property at any given time with a coach or a trainer, somebody to supervise the individuals. There would not be any tournaments or games or other activities of that nature on the property. They really want it to be a low-key facility just for training and practice purposes. The other two components of the request, actually 3 components of the request, are the building would have 24-foot sidewalls on this new building. 16 feet is allowed. Building would have a height of 37 feet, and 20 feet is allowed for that structure. And the combined area is of the 2 buildings is well over the allowed requirement for accessory buildings on the structure. So those are the other subcomponents of the conditional use permit. We did not have them apply for variances for those because essentially the use as a gym dictates all those considerations. The height of the building is because of the gym. You need to have area to hang the lights in the ceiling and clearance for the volleyball and basketballs that are used in the games, and you need a big building to have a couple of courts on the facility where you can have four half-court games or 2 full-court games. Basically, the CUP captures all of that as one request, so you'd be voting on one to cover all aspects of the building height, area, and the sidewalls of the building. The applicant submitted a building elevation that shows in the top picture. You see the existing building is the lower building at the front of the property, and then the new building would be attached to it. And on the other lower picture, you see the view as you're looking at it from Auburn. From 69th Street. You see the front of the existing building, and then the new building will be located in back and attached to that building. The building, we asked them to do elevations because we wanted to know exactly for ourselves and for you what the building will look like visually. You can't see it real well on this image, but it will be a metal building, metal roof, metal siding, pretty good sized building of metal when you look at it from either perspective. So with that overview of what they're doing and why they're asking for the request, the staff is concerned that the golden factors have not been satisfied because the size of the building is quite a bit larger than what is allowed by right for anybody in a residential zoning district. And we're also concerned about what the long-term use of the building might be in the future should the daughter basically outgrow her childhood, which she will, and not need the gym anymore for that purpose. What becomes of the building at that point? I fully believe this owner is committed to using the building just as he's proposed. We don't have any doubt about that his plan of operation is how the building would be used. We're just concerned as time goes by what happens to the building. So with that kind of area of building size, so usually it's the second or third or fourth owner down the road who tries to repurposes buildings of that structure for other purposes. That's what our concern is. What happens long term with the building and the impact of that building on the surrounding property. Should you, in your wisdom, determine that the golden factors are satisfied, we have proposed several conditions that are summarized on the screen before you. Probably the one that could have could have possibly a positive impact on the request is condition 1B. That would be if they were to update the building elevation to integrate some of the design elements of their home to project a residential building appearance. The home is beautiful. The property is gorgeous. If they could do something like you see on Morton buildings where there's some little bit of design touches, some colors. We're not concerned about the metal, but if they were to paint the metal a more neutral color and do something to add a little bit of visual and interest to the building, that would go a long way to improving to reducing the apparent size of the building relative to the area. If it looked more like a barn or something else as opposed to an industrial look, that would help the appearance and help it blend into the area a little bit more. The other thing we wanted to reiterate, even though they've said that in their plan of operation, is condition. What number is it? 3, that games, tournaments, practice, and training for more than 15 children and any commercial use of the facility is expressly prohibited. That's getting back to the plan of operation. They basically stated that, but we wanted to re-emphasize it here. Another thing we'd like you to consider is that the grant of the conditional use permit, if you approve that, would be limited to the applicant ATI Revocable Trust. And so if they were to sell the property to somebody else down the road, the conditional use permit would lapse at that point, and the future owners of the property, if that were to occur, would be restricted to using the building for residential or agricultural purposes that are allowed in the zoning district, in the RA1 district. We give them a little bit more liberty on lighting than what they've requested. We want people to be able to get in the building and to their cars. So we will allow lighting on the pedestrian pathways in the parking lot with cutoff lighting. That way it won't have light that will spill over into the neighborhood. By having cutoff lights, it cuts the light off so it doesn't go up and spill out from the light fixture. And the hours of operation will be limited to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. for the guests. Of course, the residents can use the building at any time for their own personal use, but these times are what was proposed by the applicant in the plan of operations. So we wanted to call that out explicitly in the request. I guess you would add a condition 8 that there would be a building permit that would be obtained for the existing 5,000 square foot building as an 8th condition of the CUP. After you close the public hearing, I'd be happy to answer any questions or provide any additional input I can on the request. But that's the staff's presentation for now.
Okay. The applicant wish to provide a presentation?
Yes, we do. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. This is Greg Schwert. I'm president of Schwert Design Group, 2231 Southwest Wanamaker Road. We're here tonight representing the owner, Jordan and Eileen Canfield, and Mr. Canfield would also like to speak when I conclude some of my remarks here. Good evening, Chairman Albert and the rest of the commission members. I apologize up front if we appear to be a little bit disorganized tonight in our presentation. I think due to the holidays and some other things, we only obtained the staff report this morning about 9:30. So we haven't had a lot of time to prepare. Typically, we would try to proactively meet with staff and try to resolve any concerns or issues that they may have or the neighbors have. But time just did not allow that today. But I still think we're very confident that we can address the concerns and I think favorably come to a consensus and agreement on what can be done. I think one thing, and I don't know, we have heard some concern regarding the letter, I believe, that was sent to the neighbors that referred to a campground. And I can assure you and any one of the neighbors that there's nothing farther from what the Canfields want to build on this site. There is no campground, there is no connections, there is no utilities, and I'm not quite sure where that came from, but we just wanted to clarify that we were only talking about the addition of the recreational gym, and nothing more than that as was presented from that standpoint. I think that as Randy indicated, you know, we've gone through and tried to assess today, and we believe that we meet the majority, if not all, the intent of the golden factors. Now, you know, we fully understand that the factors must be considered by the planning staff and by the planning commission in order to determine whether or not to grant or deny a zoning change, including a change to a conditional use, which is what we're asking for. It is not necessary, though, or required that all factors have to be favorable in order for you to approve, nor is it all have to be unfavorable to deny. So, you know, all of the factors are weighted differently. All of them have different assessments in terms of the particular project we're talking about, the particular sites they're on. And again, I think that being said, we still believe that we meet a significant majority of those factors, and we'll discuss those further as we get into it. I think that, as I understand what I read today in the report and from what Mr. Anderson presented, the biggest issues or concerns are with the size of the building and the nonconformance with, I think, some of those provisions in terms of size limitations. I just want to kind of take you through a scenario here a little bit, and I think Randy alluded to it. I mean, this is a gym, and unfortunately, a gym requires certain minimum dimensions to make it functional. Low sidewalls, low peaks, those sorts of things obviously make it unusable for a gym if that's what the intended use is. If you know, if the Canfields wanted to use this for something else, then we'd probably be looking at something different. And yes, I mean, it may exceed, but you know, I think there was a statement made in the report that you know, it was excessive in terms of the size. And I guess one of our questions would be is to define, you know, what is excessive. We know that the limitation is 6,000 feet. We're talking about this building here, but it's been talked to about in terms of combining the two, just so we have restroom facilities. But we could easily separate the two buildings, and we would have a 10,000 square foot building and a 5,000 square foot building on the site. And so now our new building is 10,000 square feet, and the maximum is 6,000 feet. And so, you know, that's you know, less than 2 times the size requirement. You know, there's also and I did find also the sidewall requirement, but I could not find in the size limitations, and I'm sure it's in there somewhere, the overall height. But I did note on the RA zoning that it does allow buildings up to 42 feet in height. Now that may be only a residential, but still 42 feet is 42 feet. And so a significantly tall building or taller than the building that we're proposing. Another way we looked at this is that the Canfields own 80 acres here on this property. And the building of the placement, or the placement of the building, has been studied to the extent that we tried to minimize the views from any direction of the building, thus setting it back to the far east side of the site, which is bordered by dense trees, to the north side of the site, which has another 40 acres north of it to their next property line. And there's also a provision in your maximum size limitations that allows anything over 10,000 or 10 acres to have unlimited square footage, provided no other structure exceeds 6,000 feet. If I use that calculation and the 80 acres that the Canfields own, we could construct up to 54,215 feet of building, but they would have to be limited to 6,000 square feet, but we could put 9 additional buildings on that site according to that provision. Not that we're asking to, but I'm just trying to follow through the math and trying to put it in magnitude of where the size of this building compared to the buildings on the site. The other thing we looked at is the size of the house. The house itself is 10,000 square feet, roughly 9,000, doesn't include the garages, the pool house, those sorts of things. So in essence, this building is not much bigger or any bigger than the house itself. This building, though, sets 40 feet almost below the floor line of the house. This thing is in one of the lowest portions of the land in the northeast corner, surrounded by trees on the north, trees on the east, the smaller building on the south, and then some heavy foliage and trees along the south as well. So we think we tried to minimize the impact of this building as much as we can by setting it 40 feet lower than the house. That's 4 stories. And then setting it off to the north. And so again, trying to minimize any visual impact that we might have from that standpoint. And so, I think those would be our arguments, or at least our propositions in terms of how we dealt with that. I think that, Randy's concern, valid concerns of what the elevations of the building look like. And I think the owner is more than willing to make changes as need be to enhance the visual aspect and aesthetics of the building. That's not a deal killer. I mean, the building itself is going to be expensive. And so adding more to make it look better. And quite frankly, as you said, they've got a beautiful house, beautiful deck, beautiful lake. And I think even themselves looking off their deck would want something a little bit more enticing from that standpoint. So we don't see that as an issue at all. Again, back to the building size, the new building will occupy less than 0.3% of the total property. The 2 buildings, if we combine them, and we could easily separate the 2 and just walk from one building to the other to use the restroom facilities, takes less than 0.5%. And all 3 of the buildings combined, including the house, is still less than 0.75% of land occupancy. So I don't think we're overutilizing the land. They don't have any intent to do anything else from a construction standpoint. And obviously they would have to come back to this commission if they wanted to. So I think we can address all those issues and and meet the intent of the golden factors. There were some conditions, again, that they would like to put on if indeed there's a recommendation for approval. And again, that recommendation doesn't have to have unanimous golden factor acceptance. But item 1 was the type of graveling. The owner is willing to put in the type of graveling asked for. The building elevations we just talked about. We're willing to update those building elevations. We're willing to provide whatever documentation, engineering drawings, to get a permit in compliance with the requirements. None of these are things that we are opposed to. The Class A drainage report, John Ladson, civil engineer, is on the line with us, and John had spoken to the county fairly extensively early on and was told that this was not required. John, do you want to address that quickly?
Yeah, that's John Ladson with TGB Group. Civil engineering firm in Topeka here. I did talk to Mike Welch early before submitting this and understood what he needed. He wanted to understand where the 100-year floodplain was and where the 100-year flood would be because there's a stream off to the right, off to the east a little bit. So we went through those calculations and provided those calculations on the submittal. So I did leave a message with Mike today. Have not heard back from him. So after we get going and go through it, we'll definitely touch base with Mike and do whatever he needs to satisfy his needs on the drainage report. So.
Thanks, John. Quickly going on, item E, obtain a permit from Environmental Health Department for the proposed restroom. Happy to do that. Staff met with us, was very helpful in providing information. Actually had the design of the septic system that was put in the ancillary building that's already there. We were told that they thought it was more than adequate, but we'll verify and make sure that that's permitted. That's not an issue at all. We'll do whatever we need to do to get approval in compliance with Shawnee County Fire number 2. We weren't aware that was required, or we would have had that for you already, but we will obtain that. Item G, I believe the owners are willing to grant that easement of the right-of-way. It's my understanding, and John can speak again more to this because he's been involved in that, they would sign they would sign a document that says they will grant the easement at the time of the improvement of the road. Part of that reason is that right now that easement would take their fence and back up into their property another 15 or 20 feet. And I'm not sure, and John says that's been done successfully in the past. So that's something we'd at least want to consider on that easement is allowing that, but at the time of improvement. And then going on, I think the rest of these, I think that, again, quite frankly, I think from the Canfield standpoint, one of the things that they would request that we maybe modify, out of all the things we've talked about, is that we allow 20 children versus 15 children because they've got 2 cross courts in here, and that allows 4 teams to practice at the same time. And so we'd just be increasing it by 5 children. Absolutely, there would not be any commercial use of the facility. And I think that signage obviously is nothing we want, not wanting to advertise it. And I think that I think the county and the commission, as do we citizens and neighbors and everybody else, always face the possibility of a different use at a later point in time. I think that that's something that has to be regulated. If anybody comes and wants to change a use, they need to go through the same process. We would hope that that would not be a hindrance in granting the Canfields their opportunity to provide this, not only for their daughter and some of her teams, but maybe some of the other clubs that she plays on. Hours of operation is not an issue. Really don't see any issues here. And again, we can address almost every one of these. And I think, based on the fact that we've got 80 acres here, not 3, we're 40 feet below. We don't consider it excessive. We're willing to enhance the design and just about accommodate everything that you've asked for here. So with that, unless you have questions of me, I'm happy to answer, or we could let Mr. Canfield speak and we can circle back around.
Let's let Mr. Canfield speak, and we'll adjust questions all at once.
All right.
We'll be as organized as we can through that.
Thank you.
Hey, first of all, thanks everyone for taking the time to consider the project. Appreciated by the Canfield family. Greg, thank you for your comments and addressing that. I thought you did a great job. So some of the things that I was going to point out, you did a good job of covering. One thing I may reiterate just a bit is, our intention certainly wasn't to cause any angst for our neighbors. I think Greg mentioned, from our perspective, we love the property, we love the views. So to the extent, I hope you hear from us that we were thoughtful about the process, just in terms as we looked at the entire property, where we could place this. And again, lowest elevation, tree lined. The idea of painting that facility a certain color or dressing it up to make sure that it conforms with what the committee is requesting, absolutely okay, 100% on board in doing that, and certainly we plan to do that anyway. From the facility itself, and we kind of mentioned Zoe, my daughter, and her teams. The other thing I'd mention, I want to make sure that I point out is it's a time in COVID's probably put a spotlight on it, just like it's put a spotlight on everything else. But you can imagine we've been very active in the community and surrounding communities, just from a charitable perspective and supporting local teams. Never have I heard and had as many phone calls as I have, in the last really 18 months as to everyone's looking for an opportunity to, a space to hold their practices, do training, have a gym. COVID again just put a major spotlight on that. So as we were thinking about, our family planning and what we hope to do with this piece of property that we love so much, we just thought, again, from Zoe's perspective, certainly, I have a son that we hope he comes back to the area. Who knows where he'll go, but we've always spent time as a family in the gym. So first and foremost, it was just our family's grown up in the gym. We plan to be in this property. You can never say forever. And maybe I'm oversharing here, but we don't have a note on, our home, on the acreage we have. We've actively looked at adding acreage. We plan to be here for a long time. It's in our estate plan. We hope to pass it on to our kids. And again, maybe oversharing a bit, but probably not in the beginning. But ultimately, this facility would make sense to add to our Canfield Family Foundation, in which, our goal in that foundation, and certainly our kids have been a part of it, is to make sure that we continue to take the blessings that we have and continue to support the community. So I hope you hear first and foremost that it's for personal use. Secondly, though, there is a major lack of gym space in Topeka and the surrounding communities. So we felt like it would be wrong to just build a facility only for ourselves. And that's why we were so forthcoming when we sat down with the Planning Commission, when I sat down with our builder, architects, and said, hey, how can we impact as many kids in the community? And certainly not from a commercial perspective, but just a perspective of, we think we have an opportunity to do something great for a lot of people that are looking for space and looking for an opportunity to continue to develop their skills as well as develop their teams. So, and one thing I want to mention, and I put this in the proposal, it wouldn't be like an open gym with a revolving door. We would want to make sure there was always supervision. I think Greg did a good job of saying, we think 20 kids is important, just because you could have, whether it's volleyball or basketball, 2 full teams going and practicing at the same time. So we want to make sure those numbers are right. But again, and I know John Ladson's done some work from us, and his kids were really active in all sports teams. Our daughters play together, and he could probably speak to everybody's desperate to find gym time. And we just thought this was a way to, again, make sure that we're supporting the community. And Randy and Brian, any questions that folks on the call have from me, we're happy to answer them. I know my wife's on as well, but I'm happy to field those calls. Any questions that you have.
Okay, and that's what time it is. Are there any questions from members of the commission for the applicants?
I have something to add, Brian. The proposal 1F, I'm a member of the fire department in Auburn, Shawnee County Fire District number 2, and we don't do inspections. So I would like to add that.
Hey, got it. One other thing that I forgot to mention, something came up as to the existing building that's there today. That's a shed. And full disclosure, we didn't build that shed was built when we bought the property. We just found out that it didn't have a permit when we went to the Planning Commission and sat down to talk about this for the first time. We're happy to do whatever we need to do. And I just want to make sure folks know there wasn't any intention, to do anything misleading or anything of the such. That was news to us when we met a couple months ago.
Okay.
And this is Greg Schwartz. To Tyler's point, I believe, Tyler, you said that you do not do inspections. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And again, I'm confident that we will design this building to meet all building codes, whether they're county or city or international building codes, everything that we're under in any jurisdiction. So, and we were fortunate enough to be the architect of record for the new indoor training facility at Washburn University. And through that process, we've had a lot of exposure and a lot of meetings with the fire department. So I think that hopefully we can make sure that we can satisfy you that we've met all those conditions, even though you do not do an inspection.
Thank you.
I was going to make a comment, just something to notice. I see that the property owner or the trust owns some of the land areas north of this location, but we can only consider what is currently plotted or plat exemption, however that was done, as the 37 acres, just because the owner can sell that at any time, not saying that he wants to, but that is our only consideration as far as property is concerned. So I wanted to mention that. And I had a couple other questions, but I can't think of them now. Are there any other questions from the commissioners?
Brian, this is Greg Schwartz again, and not to
Yes, sir.
reiterate it, but I do appreciate that comment. We're still looking at sitting on 40 acres, and I think that, our argument, at least in my mind, could still apply in terms of we could still build 5 buildings, 6,000 square feet on there, and we still set below by 40 feet, some of those same conditions, but definitely understand your concern there, and that's a valid point.
Yes, that you jog my memory too. I also wanted to make a comment that whether we combined buildings or not, the way the ruling is, and if we want exact wording, I'd ask Joni to read that if she's got it available, but it's all accessory buildings connected or separate, total up to 5,000, I believe. So it's that's the rules that were set. Joni, were those set? Maybe this is the wrong time to do this, but were those set by the commission?
So the accessory, can you hear me and
Yes.
see me? Because I'm in my Zoom call, but I'm also looking at the actual regulation right now. The way that these sizes are set is done as part of our zoning regulations. And for the accessory buildings, the way that it reads is that the maximum size for a property that's 10 acres or more is 6,000 square feet. And it states that unlimited square footage provided that no individual structure exceeds 6,000 square feet. So an individual structure is not supposed to exceed 6,000 square feet. What Greg, I believe, was saying is that you could have multiple buildings of 6,000 square feet, which is true based on the fact that they have more than 10 acres. However, the building proposed here is 10,000 square feet, and so it does exceed the 6,000 square feet. And so I'm not quite sure what the argument there was that they complied with that square footage. I had some question about that.
Joni, I appreciate that. Again, I don't think we were asking for an exception to the 6,000 and trying to look at it from the standpoint of the size of the property we're looking at and the use of the facility from the standpoint of making it a functional gym. It takes that much square footage to, we don't have bleachers in here. We don't have locker rooms. We don't have restrooms. We are bare minimum just to get the 2 cross court gyms in there. And that's why it exceeds the 6,000 square feet.
And yeah, and I think that that's why Randy pointed out at the beginning that they weren't asking you to apply for a variance based on the fact that this
Right.
conditional use permit took into consideration the fact that it was a gym.
Right.
That's correct. And we're not asking you to separate the two or to keep them combined. It's completely your decision. I think it actually works better if you're connected like you got it. But that's your decision. It doesn't affect anything about what the staff recommendation might or might not be.
All right. Thank you, Randy.
And if I can, I want to ask Tyler a question about condition 1F about the fire district approval. if you look at condition 1C, we're asking them to comply with the commercial building code requirements for the building, since it is kind of commercial in nature, given the fact there's going to be kids and occupants in there. We were under the impression that they would need a code footprint for the fire purposes to be able to review the application. If that's not true, then we'd be happy to delete condition 1F. But that was almost wanted you to understand that was the basis of it being in there, and we did tell them that in the very first meeting that that was our impression, because other buildings we've done like this have required a code footprint. But if it's not anything you need to be looking at, we can take it out. I just want to make sure I understood what your point was when you made your comment a minute ago.
This is Joni, and I just want to make a point here. I think that instead of removing that clause, that you would just add a statement that says, if any is required, so that if necessary, it's there, not removed. But if it is something that is required per commercial requirements, if it's not required, no biggie, they don't have to provide it. But I think that we've almost always included the approval by
fire district,
local fire district, as part of the requirements. And so I would hesitate to take it out completely. Unless
that's agreeable.
Yeah, unless of course the commissioners vote to do it that way. That's, their decision.
And this
No,
is
my only point was that I didn't want you to spend a lot of time and effort trying to get something that I don't think you can get. But as far as our purposes tonight, I think it's fine to leave it in and put, if necessary, then to get that.
Okay, thank you.
This is Greg Short. We can easily provide, we have to do the code analysis anyway. We can provide that in terms of a documented code footprint.
Greg, as the licensed professional doing that, are you considering this a commercial structure, or how are you determining which codes to use for this facility?
We will look at it under all the codes that are under the jurisdiction of anything we would have to construct within the city of Topeka. The International Building Code, the plumbing codes, the electrical codes. We would essentially go through, obviously much less complicated, but we would go through the same analysis as we did on the indoor training facility for Washburn or any church school type building. We do. We've done several gym additions in St. Mary's, Rossville for the school district, Christ the King gym addition. So we would go through that same analysis. And, as you said, the architect of record, I would have to sign off on that, put my license on the line that we meet all those codes.
Okay. I thought of the other question that was on the back of my head. Was there any consideration, or could there be any consideration that part of this building be put undergrade, basement type, to help with the eave height and the ridge height?
We didn't look at that, Brian. I think that, one of our concerns, and we would have to look at that even further, one of the concerns was avoiding the floodplain issue that the county has. And, we're sitting down there by that creek, so we could move the building farther up the hill and sink it, but then we're still raising the roof line. And so I think it was a balance of trying to make sure that we were out of the floodplain, meeting all those conditions. And then also, from the standpoint of trying to match the grade of the existing building so that we don't have to get into ADA ramps and things like that inside the buildings.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree with Randy. Personally, I agree with Randy. It's better to connect it to this building. Okay. Are there any other questions from commissioners or staff, since I just ran right past the staff?
So I would know we haven't heard anything from the neighbors yet, but I know one of the things was 15 kids versus 20 kids. So let's say there's 15 kids. How many vehicles are going to be pulling in there and how often? Because you're talking one vehicle per kid. If multiple parents want to come watch their kid practice, I mean, is there a limit on the total amount of people?
Jordan, do you know how you typically handle that? I mean, they come and drop off and pick up, or, I mean, we really don't have any place for parents to stay and watch. Jordan, you may have to address that.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks. It's not a perfect science, right? I think it depends on kind of the age of the kids that are in the gym at the various times. Shorty's right. It's not designed to, have parents. There's no bleachers, there's no viewing area, no seating area. So in that regard, if it's high school kids, could you have, if you had all high school practice in there, I guess, a maximum, if we had 20 kids, you could have 20 cars in that parking area. I just don't see that happening very often. Our thought was 10 to 15 in terms of the asphalt area that we were putting in would easily maintain the volume of cars. I wish I had a better answer for you. I don't know that we've thought through that to the point where we said, hey, it's drop off only, or gone to that extent. But I guess it's something that we could consider. Again, I think it depends on the age of kids at a given time that are using the facility. And the other thing I do want to point out in this is our intention. Again, this is personal use, and I talked about my daughter and potentially some of her teams that will use it. Talked about my son and our family. Hopefully our grandkids are playing in there. It's a place where we can hang out someday. But this is not a facility where we're going to market it. We're going to push it out there, and from a commercial perspective where we're trying to have every hour of that gym filled. I do think there are times when we can be generous and allow various club teams to use it if they have supervision. But I want to be clear, we're not going to run this like Sports Zone. It will be on a limited use basis.
Josh, just for the record, the site plan is showing 9 parking places proposed. We determined that would be adequate for 15 children. If they want to go up to 20, they might need one more parking place to meet the zoning requirement for parking spaces. But your point's still taken. If they have a crowd, we don't want people parking out in the right of way. But it appears they have room on this. They have room on their site where they could park in the grass or in the adjoining area. But 10 is the requirement by the zoning ordinance for that many children.
Thank you, Randy. And Jordan, how often do practices generally run? It's not come and go. I mean, these 2 hours at a time,
right. 2 hours at a time on average, Shorty. Some will go a little longer, but
yeah,
on average 2 hours. And again, I don't foresee it, the gym being, I think it's set up to where if we had a club team, we could have 2 practices going at a given time. But, the thought isn't that that's going to be a full facility round the clock by any stretch. We just wanted to be clear that we wanted to have the ability to be able to let teams use it on occasion.
Okay, any other commissioners have questions before I open up? Okay, seeing none, I'll have everybody mute their mics again. And I will ask that any member of the public that wish to speak in favor of the item, we're going to have to do one at a time. It might be a little disorganized, but please unmute. And yeah, those that wish to speak in favor of the item. Okay. No one? Okay. Would anybody wish to speak in opposition of the item? Now is your time. Come on, state your name.
Virgil Clark.
Hello, hello. We're trying to unmute. Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We heard Dargel come on. We'll let him speak first. Craig, if we need a little help, can you assist us in that?
Sure thing.
Okay. Dargel?
I'm kind of caught between this because I'm one of those guys who hate the idea of owning a bunch of land and not getting to use it how you want. So on that part, I know how Jordan's feeling in that direction. My concerns, and my property is probably the furthest one away from this, but my biggest concern is, this is going to fall eventually. Jordan's not going to live forever. His kids may or may not own that house eventually. Eventually, that ground's going to have to probably be subdivided. The barns get separated, possibly. It's all a guessing game when you get right down to it. But this building, to me, looks like something that is going to fall in the category of a lot of, like churches do a lot of times. Churches disband. You've got a big commercial building there in a zoned area that's usually residential, and it seems like the uses of those kind of vary. This building's gonna be big enough where, somebody could turn it into a house. They could turn it into a commercial building. There's a lot of uses for that much square footage, but it's primarily too big and not built with the right materials to turn it into a house unless you're not really particular what a house looks like. The traffic kind of drives me nuts. The thought of people coming in and out of there is kind of strange to me as far as the volume. If you got 15, 20 kids, you got 15 or 20 parents, and along with other kids, maybe being there may not be in place for them to watch, but parents really seem to find a place to stand. And so I think the parking is probably inadequate if it goes through. The noise level, I think, would be a little more than the neighbors would want. I know I wouldn't want to live east of there. I don't think from my property I'd be able to hear anything go off, any noise bother me from my property, in which I don't even live there. I just own the property. I feel like it's a commercial product that I think would be very convenient for Jordan and his family. I can see them using that for the purpose he stated. And I don't think they're trying to lead anybody astray of using it for that purpose for a period of time and then changing the use of it. I think there's the Auburn Community Center, 5 minutes away from that location. There's other gymnasiums, I think, that will open up. And so I feel like if they want to use it more for their personal use, in my eyes, I would rather see it closer to the house, be built closer to the house with different materials that match the house. Bottom line is there's really, to my knowledge, there's no restrictions on materials to be used on buildings around a home out in the county where there's no restrictions or covenants, so to speak. I think that, he's got a beautiful house out there. He's got a beautiful pool house that I don't know if he was the one that added that or the previous owner did, but it matches the house nicely. I think that if it was going to be used more personally, I think it'd be better to put it closer to the house. I know it's a big structure, and so you hate to put a big structure that's going to conflict with a large house, and you go, which one's the house? Because that one's bigger. But pretty soon, structures like this, like I said, people sell houses, they move, Other people don't have a use for that building, but they love the house. They buy the property, so they peel off 3 or 4 acres and sell the building and four acres with it. Sometimes people use things for, teams to play, practice things. Then somebody gets a wise idea. Hey, let's have a wedding here on Saturday. I know Jordan can definitely stick to them and go, we're not allowed to have weddings. We've got a conditional use permit, but future owners may not be as honest as him. Those are my biggest concerns. I will say that 69th and Auburn Road, there's been people killed at that intersection. Anybody coming from the east and turning to the south, it's pretty dangerous because that's a kind of a blind hill there. But if I guess I think it'd be better if there could be another building built on a commercial piece of property that would be more convenient to everybody. And if Jordan kids finally outgrow it, sell it, do something with it. But I just don't feel that this is the proper place for this structure. And I guess that is probably about all I've got to do to complain about. So I will turn it over to you guys.
I think we had a little trouble getting unmuted initially, but if you guys are able to hear us, this is Nick and Kelsey Stringer. We're neighbors as well, and we would definitely like to speak on behalf of the Canfield family for the project. Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Brian, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. I've been talking my ear off.
No problem.
We will give you an opportunity to speak. We passed the 4 in favor of already, but I know we're on Zoom. We'll give you an opportunity to speak. I did ask all the commissioners if they have any questions for Dargel.
Yeah, so he said that he owns the property, but he doesn't live on the property. Is that correct? Where does he live at?
Diagonal from the property, it looks like it's agricultural.
Correct. That's the property that he owns, but he said he didn't live there. I just wondered if he lived close by.
No, I do not live anywhere near there.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from commissioners?
I have a question that was brought up, and maybe Randy can answer it. What's the process when the Canfields move on and a different use happens, or the new owners want a different use? Do they need to apply for a conditional use permit? Can you speak to that or give us some information on what might happen?
Well, if you adopt this conditional use permit with the condition that we're proposing that it be limited to the Canfields, then if they move on and the property is left, the CUP expires at that point. And if they wanted to reuse it for anything other than residential, for residential purposes or for agricultural storage, it wouldn't be permitted, or might be permitted by conditional use permit, but they'd have to start that process all over again. So if they wanted to continue the gym, they'd have to come back and apply for a new CUP.
So even to continue use as a gym, they have to get a new conditional use permit?
Well, that's right now the condition four, we're saying it'd be limited to the applicant. If you were to approve it without any limitation like that, then if somebody wanted to come in afterward and continue the use, they would be able to do that.
Thank you.
I don't mean to speak out of order, but is there a way, and Greg, we talked to Mike Unrein about this a little bit. Is there a way, maybe now is not the time, but is there a way to handle this contractually to where we do it up front?
Mr. Canfield, I think it's better if we have you guys take notes and do this all in one rebuttal. It stays orderly like that, and we might have additional landowners that have same concerns. So I hate to cut you off, but I think it's better to do it this way.
No problem. Apologies.
Okay, no problem. Okay, are there any others that wish to speak wish to speak about this item? I'll just open it up, opposition and in favor of.
Yes, my husband, Nick, and I would. I do apologize for the technical difficulties. We're learning Zoom in this process as well. Does anybody hear me now?
Yes, you're in favor of?
Yes, this is Kelsey Stringer and Nick Stringer, my husband, is with me. We do want to speak in favor of the Canfield family and their gym. We just actually purchased property nearly right across the street from the current structure that's in place that you're speaking about. We're at 8121 Southwest 69th Street. And we plan to build our forever family home there in the coming year. So I do want to reiterate, I've known Jordy and Eileen most of my life, and they're some of the most thoughtful and generous people that I've ever known. And they do so much for our community, a lot of which they don't ever take credit for. And so Nick and I really do want to show an immense amount of support for them, wanting to really just build an amazing indoor gym space, primarily for their two children, who are both very, very talented athletes. And I think it's been clear from the beginning from them that they just want to be able to provide them a space to train together as a family, occasionally with teammates, friends. You know, I'm somebody who grew up in the club circuit with sports and went to a million club practices through my lifetime. And I'm telling you, those are very, very low key. They're not bothersome. They're not loud. Usually high school players just kind of come and go on their own. And these are responsible kids, you know, they're athletes. So it's not something that's going to be disruptive in any way. And, you know, I'd venture to say we're probably the closest house and driveway to that structure because there's a heavy tree line on the east side. So we're across the street. And, you know, we don't see any issue with it whatsoever. We think this is also going to be a great benefit to the businesses who are going to contract and build the structure, to the county who's they're going to pay taxes to every year. You know, these are good people who are really just trying to do a good thing and offer it up for, you know, no cost use to the community on occasion, you know, for club teams, which we all know we all need more gym space. We all need more positive activities for kids to do, especially in this time. So really, we don't see any downside to this whatsoever, and feel that it's completely within their rights to want to build a dream gym structure for their children. And we celebrate that and their success and would be nothing but supportive of that moving forward. That's all we've got.
Thank you, Kelsey. Commissioners, any questions for Kelsey? Okay. Seeing none, are there any others that wish to speak in favor or in opposition?
This is Dave Stratton. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're a little hard to hear, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'll try to do better. I'm not really speaking in opposition at all. I just would like the commissioners to, if they issue a special permit, restrict it so that that's the only use for it, like the other gentleman said. I mean, something real big could be a small manufacturing facility. So I wouldn't like to see that put in there, you know, down the road sometime.
Okay.
Other than that, I'm fine with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Dave? Okay. Seeing none, would anybody else wish to speak? Okay. All right, I will give the applicant a chance to rebut. We're mainly concerned about the items that were brought up, but any additional information you have, now's the time.
I don't know, Jordan, I don't know if you're going to speak. I just have a couple comments. Again, I think we still believe that this, you know, is an excellent project. You know, we've got the majority of the support of the neighbors, those that live there. And you know, again, I think just reiterating that we're willing to concede a lot of these things and happy to do so. Couple points. One, I know it has been mentioned a few times that, this could become a commercial building, could be used for other things. And I'm only asking because I don't know, but the RA1 says it permits agricultural associated commercial uses. I have no clue what that means. I don't know if that's a feed store or a tractor supply store, but the verbiage there, and again, we're not any intentions there, but the verbiage there under the RA1 calls for agriculture associated commercial uses. Maybe something that, may need to be looked at from the county standpoint, but it is in the language. The other thing, again, I think that, we talked about, and we always have concerns about the future, but I'm not sure, how we would have this on any zoning case or any special use permit we ever argue or try to obtain, and that's trying to hold the current owner, accountable for future what ifs. I think that we have an obligation, Jordan has an obligation, the county has an obligation. I mean, we can, if that was the case, I'm not sure anything would ever get rezoned or, special use permits put in place if everything was what if, and that would all I have to say at this point. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I'd just wrap it by saying thanks everyone for your consideration. We appreciate it. Again, I hope you hear that we tried to be really thoughtful about the process and, impact have as small as impact as possible. One thing, and Randy, I sent an email to you. I did proactively reach out to our neighbors to the south who are really close. Kelsey and Nick mentioned their property is really close. And then directly to the east are Jeremy and Jenna Hendrickson. And they send an email today, which I forwarded to Randy, that supports the project. And so we prior to going into this, we thought about, and I know there's a bigger radius that's considered, but we tried to think about our neighbors that were the closest possible. Not that we don't think about the other ones, but I did reach out to them, at least talk them through the project and to make sure that they were supportive. I'm not sure if that email could be shared with the rest of the group or if it has been shared with the rest of the group, but I think that is the closest neighbor to the property. They would be precisely to the east on the other side of the tree line. Again, thanks everyone for your consideration.
Thank you.
Just for the record, I don't have any emails from you in my mailbox. You might want to resend those later today or tomorrow. I don't see anything in here.
Apologies, I'll send it right now.
Okay.
I don't want to close the public hearing yet, but I've got a couple questions myself, Randy. Are we just because of I'm guessing the Zoom stuff and what Greg Schwartz was saying about getting stuff together and stuff, have we been rushed a little bit? Are there other considerations that haven't had time to look at? Or from staff's perspective, everything's laid out? Can you let us know from planning's perspective how?
Well, I think everything's laid out in the staff report. I mean, it's really a black and white case. But if I were the applicant and wanted to put the best face on my project, if they're saying they can do something to the building elevation to make it look more residential in nature, one thing you can consider is if it's right on the borderline of have they met their golden factors to your satisfaction or not, you could ask them to take a 1-month continuance, allow them to update the elevation and to show you what they would propose as, in complying with that one condition, and then come back in February and look at it again before we proceed to the county commission. That's one thing you could do. I mean, in the recent past, that's been your preference, as opposed to just passing it along and letting the county commission deal with it, with the elevation after you have referred it to them, but you haven't approved and blessed the elevation yourself. That might be a way to go. And also, they can, if they want to have 20 kids instead of 15, they can also revise the plan of operation to show that. And if there's anything else they've heard in this discussion that they would want to revise their plan of operation or their application to, they can also do that then as part of a continuance. So it'd be up to them, I think, to tell you if they would like the additional 3 or 4 weeks to make those changes and updates, or let the dice roll with it the way it's presented to you today.
That's what I was getting at, and without talking to the rest of the commissioners here, and is Jordan, for you, whatever we do today goes on to the Shawnee County Commission in the form that it's shown. Joni, if you want to comment on that. We've had previous items where some changes were proposed, but we kind of need those in our hands to be able to provide, whether this is approved or not. We would like to see the final thing. So if you guys are looking at design changes, would it be better to come back in a month?
This is Joni. I can comment on that briefly. If there are changes that are going to be made, they need to be considered by the Planning Commission before going to the Board of County Commissioners. And so depending on what kind of changes you guys were thinking of, if any, because depending on what happens here, if it gets denied, it goes to the Board of County Commissioners, and if it gets approved, it goes to the Board of County Commissioners, and they consider what it is that the Planning Commission has heard. So Brian is correct. They have at times given a 1 month continuance so that any plan changes can be made if required, because what happens is if you get denied and go to the Board of County Commissioners and get denied there's a time limit for coming back to reapply for a new conditional use permit with different changes. And so if you're wanting to make any changes and you think that it's going to improve your chances of approval, you might consider taking that extra time and really considering the comments that were made or suggestions that you guys have discussed tonight.
Joni, this is Greg Schwartz. Are you saying, and I think I understand, but obviously the Canfields would like to move forward with the project. I mean, we still think that it's a successful project. Losing a month for construction just sets it back even further. I think, if that's our only option, but what you're saying is we cannot take that month and make all these changes, or that you cannot make a motion to approve, which we would ask, obviously, with these conditions of approving or improving the elevations and the other things that we've talked about.
So what you're saying is, can they make a motion to approve it and then you make changes to the plans and present something different to the Board of County Commissioners?
Right. We just hate to lose a month in there, because if we continued a month, then we don't go to the county commission until March. Again, we're making some assumptions here, but yeah, that's all we're trying to do is save that time.
Well, I can't advise you in terms of whether you should do that or not. If what happens is, if they approve this plan today, they've approved the plan based on the plan that's been presented. And if you take something different to the Board of County Commissioners, then it's up to the Board of County Commissioners to decide whether they're going to actually approve or deny your request. And if they deny your request, then you're back to square one, or they can recommend that it be sent back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration based on the new changes. So,
Or can they not approve it as is? If it's denied here, they could also approve it as is.
say that again?
If it would be denied tonight, it would still go to the county commission, would it not? Or we could,
That's correct.
and they could vote to approve it as is after a presentation to the county commission. Is that correct?
They do have the ability to approve something, yes.
Okay.
Joni, I have one other just kind of legal question that I don't want to screw up here. Zoom is kind of odd, trying to get used to it. If I close the public hearing and we discuss a multitude of things amongst the commissioners where we're not allowing comment again, can I have just the applicants come back and because we haven't discussed everything here, potentially there's additional comments from the commissioners and discussion. Typically, we close the public hearing and no additional comments are made.
I would say that if you have any questions for the applicants, that you ask those now, because you're correct. Once the public hearing is closed, at that stage, you're moving forward and making a motion on what to do. And so you shouldn't at that stage be asking questions of the applicant or of those in opposition or in favor of the matter.
Okay.
Hey, Brian, could I,
yes.
I don't know what the order is. Could I speak?
Yes.
Thank you. The only thing, obviously this is interesting because we're all over Zoom. And I kind of will pose this to Greg a bit is, what I don't want to do is lose obviously we were only notified today. So Greg kind of mentioned when we started off, we didn't see the materials, or I don't think our builder did. I don't think Greg did. And I know I didn't receive any of the materials for the meeting tonight until mid-morning. And so we have had a kind of a short window to prepare. I don't want to lose I'll just speak plainly, right? I don't want to lose the project over 30 days. I think we've talked through some of the issues that potentially we face, but at the same time, I know, I'm asking a builder that's already blocked time on his schedule to do things, and I want to be respectful of their time, etc. So, Greg, I know you go through this process a lot more. This is the first time for me. I'll defer a bit on. I don't want to put pressure on you. If I need to make a call, I'll make a call, but this is probably unorthodox, but I'll just ask you.
Gee, thanks, Jordan.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
I mean,
I think that, and not to beat around the bush, I thought that if the planning commission could make recommendations conditions that we would agree to, that we could move forward and go on with a favorable recommendation to the county commissioners. If that's not the case, if they can't do that or unwilling to do that, I guess, like you said, you don't want to lose it over 30 days, but I have no feel myself right now as to where the commissioners stand or what the temperature is for the project itself.
Got it. Sorry, Shorty, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm
That's
okay.
Right. You didn't.
I know I did, but that's just my nature. I'm okay with moving the project forward. I feel like we've made our case. I think we've shown willingness to meet the requirements as needed going forward, or as asked going forward. And I guess that's where I'm at, Shorty.
Okay, I'll discuss kind of my feelings right here, just so I can leave the hearing open for a little bit. you know, that we do have rules and guidelines set by the county commission. Obviously, this item is going to go to them for approval or denial. We are also, as mentioned earlier, we review and consider the golden factors in our decisions that we make. And so the reason why I kind of kept this open and wanted to bring it to the attention is there was a little bit of talk about making it possibly a little bit more residential, or even there was a little bit of suggestion maybe it be made more agricultural looking. And so that's why, you know, we can send it on just like this if it gets approved. Like I said, I don't know what the other commissioners are feeling or seeing with this as far as the golden factors are concerned. I do have concerns with some of the golden factors. I wasn't able to go visit the property like I tried to, but I did Google Maps, and this building will be seen fairly easily from 69th Street. But I don't think it'll be quite tall enough to be seen from Auburn Road. It's kind of hard to tell from Google Maps. But my concerns are just the aesthetics of the building. Just the aesthetics of what's in front of us now to approve or deny. And other commissioners, I would, if you're having thoughts that you wish to share before I close the public meeting, I'd invite you to do so.
Brian?
Yeah.
It's Judy. And I agree with you. I'm not comfortable approving it until those issues are worked out. We did that once and it didn't work out well.
Other commissioners?
I got something. So I think it's a great idea. I think my feeling that I'm getting from Jordan is basically he wants to build the gym for his kids. It sounds like he's willing to do whatever is asked for him to do to get it approved. And what I feel like is it's like he's sitting there trying to guess what we want. He's got to guess what we want to get it approved. Instead of, you know, it's like, well, you might need to try this, you might need to try that. Well, he doesn't really know. If we say, hey, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see that, and then they go back and come up with a better site plan or a better elevation of, okay, this is the stuff we're trying to address, instead of him just trying to guess what we would approve, I guess is kind of what I'm struggling with.
Sounds fair. Any other commissioners? Okay. Kind of stuck here. Okay. From the applicant, are there any other information?
Brian?
Yes.
This is Jeanette. I did drive by the property and I believe that they've chosen the best place they probably could for it because of the heavy timber to one side. I guess it does satisfy most of the golden factors except for conforming with, you know, the county master plan and the height requirements, et cetera. I don't know if there's any way it could be smaller and do what they want it to do. I know their heart's in the right place, and but I do feel like maybe there's some changes that need to be made, and we also would need to add that the parking space area be no less than 10 probably. And I think 20 children instead of 15, I don't have any problem with that.
This is Joni. I would like to, if that's a consideration, to change the number of kids. I would also ask that for now, because of COVID, we include some sort of clause that states that it has to comply with all state or local orders. And we can keep it very generic in that so that it doesn't reference COVID, but I think that we should make sure that it complies with any orders that are currently in place if and when that gets approved and moves on.
And I think, Josh, to your point of it being kind of up in the air, I think that Jordan can work with Randy, who can guide him on what he hears us saying.
Just for the record, Josh's point is well taken. We try to get that direction. In the condition 1B, we say to integrate some of the design elements of the home to project a residential building appearance, whether that's an agricultural aspect or residential. We don't really have any preference. My objective is to leave that to the designers to design. Leave it open-ended. Let them find the middle ground of what their client can afford and what they think will turn the trick to get the thing approved. I'm not an architect. I don't pretend to be one, but they know how to do their job. So that's where we were. We wanted them to. There's plenty of good design cues off the building that already exist with the residents. Whether it's a pastoral barn looking thing or the home, either way is fine with us. I'll leave that to them to pick the best things that their client can afford and make a positive difference. We're not opposed to the metal. There are ways you can dress it up, and I'm sure they know what those ways are. So, whether it's through different color combinations or using a wainscot or through the window design, color of the roof, there's all kinds of ways you can do things. I didn't want to be overly specific. Prefer that they do the design themselves, keeping with the budget of their client. Oh, and by the way, if you look at the picture I've got on here, if they're going to do something with the elevation, you can on this picture on the bottom one on the south elevation, and you see how the building is set in the bottom of that slope. It would be helpful if we had a elevation call out right here with a line drawn across here, so you could see exactly how sunk down the bottom of the building is in relation to the slope. I mean, the elevation makes a good point. I think if we had the real numbers, where you could say that the real visual impact from Auburn is going to be from a point somewhere here to the top, that by itself helps you make your point of the apparent visual impact being less than what a 37-foot tall height would suggest. I mean, I think there are little things you can do like that provide additional information that these commissioners and the county commissioners would find useful. No, I'd find useful.
Am I allowed to speak?
Yeah. I'm sorry, who is this?
This is Dargel Clark.
Yes.
I had spoken opposition. I'm still concerned about the future use of that facility after everybody's long gone. Don't get me wrong about that. But from a construction and common sense standpoint, the building height I don't think should be an issue with the county, because it does sit in a valley. The elevation, I mean, the front elevation of what you see from the street, everybody thinks this thing's setting 35 feet from the street like a normal house. It sets pretty far back. I don't think spending money on the front of this building is going to make it or break it, because as you drive down the road, I think what will catch your eye is the height of the building and not the front of it. I think you could probably plant a couple trees down by the road and probably hide it just as much, and without spending money on the front elevation to try to dress it up because like I said, this thing will set pretty far back from 69th Street.
Okay, I appreciate that. Since I let Dargel talk there, would the applicant wish to, I'd like to give the applicant kind of the last word. Are there any other, is there anything else from the applicant that we need to consider?
Greg,
Yeah, and again, I appreciate Dargel's concern. You know, I mean, again, we as the designers, especially Jordan as the owner, unfortunately does not have that ability to control. You can only do that through the restrictions that you place on it through the conditional use. And so we've just got to hope that, you know, those are adhered to, and if somebody wants to make a change, they come back. You know, I think Dargel's actually, I mean, absolutely right. We just ran a quick calculation. The elevation at 69th and Auburn is 1 foot higher than the top of the building at the roof line down setting in the hole. So yeah, it's almost going to be impossible to see it. It's not that, you know, the Canfields may not come back and do some additional landscaping and screening of the building along the pond area and things as well. So, you know, if the only concern is the use, it seems to me that that's the easiest thing to regulate.
That's fair.
So I guess what I'm saying is I would change my vote as far as being in opposition. I think Greg made a good point that you can kind of plan for the future, but you can't plan for everything. And I think you just deal with that when the time comes. Like I said, this thing sits in a pretty good size hole down there in the valley. And I don't think you're going to see it from when you're driving down Auburn Road, you've got to pay attention to the road and not what's to the left and the right of you, especially that far back from Auburn Road. 69th Street, same thing. This thing's you don't really notice the existing building in there too much. The new building's going to be a lot taller, but it's going to set back further. And I think it would, I don't think there's a big issue with trying to dress it up like we were inside the city limits.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
All right, anything else from the applicant?
No, again, thanks everyone for your consideration. Appreciate the feedback. I learned a lot through the process. The only comment to Dargel's point, we have considered, and I think Shorty said it too, we have considered doing some landscaping and so on and so forth, but frankly, that's probably plan B. We wanted to get through the facility first, but you know, if the Armstrongs to our south, I had a conversation with Bill, to the extent they would be okay with it, we wouldn't want to put trees there if that blocked, you know, their view or did something, but it's certainly something that even in the conversation I had, if we can do something to make them feel more comfortable and make it more aesthetically pleasing, we sure will. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I will close the public hearing. So no additional comments from the public will be considered. At this time, the commissioners may have discussions amongst themselves or staff if they need to do so. Also, I'll open that up to you guys. I have a couple things myself.
Hey, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Again, Tyler Tinbrink. I live right south of Auburn, and I drive by this property twice a day during the work week. And the existing building is about the ugliest building you can imagine. It's all one color. There's no eaves on the roof, but it's down low enough that it doesn't bother you. And I've driven by since I've considered this project, and I don't think there'll be an issue from Auburn Road in terms of the height. And I wanted to point out there's a mile north of this on 61st Street, there's a gym that's green, that's up on a hilltop that I drive by all the time, and it doesn't bother me. It has some trees in front of it. There was a home there that burned down, but now it's just the basketball court. So I don't really have many concerns about it.
Okay. Other commissioners?
I mean, I look at it as like I said before, I think Jordan's intentions are good. He wants it to happen. I think if there is a commissioner that has some issues or has some concerns, I think if it's reasonable on what you want done, I think the main thing is tell him what you want fixed or what you think the problem is. And if you do that, I think, it'll be addressed and taken care of. I think it's good intentions, and we just need to tell him, hey, this is what you need to do. And I'm confident he'll do it.
Okay, thank you. In my review of the golden factors, and just thoughts on, I believe he should be able to build the structure he wants to build, looking at the golden factors and considering the square foot and height restrictions that the Shawnee County Commission have chosen. The upper limit of that is 10 acres. We do have almost 40 here. It's already an estate size house. So it's, as far as character of the neighborhood, the house was placed there well before these owners owned it, I believe. So it's an estate size property and house along with it. It's not abnormal to have large buildings on, whether you're storing Lamborghinis or you're playing basketball. I've definitely seen those. So personally, it doesn't meet perfectly, and it is larger than what the Shawnee County Commissioners have restricted. They will get an opportunity to speak on this item and vote on it. So that's kind of where my thoughts are right now. Any other commissioners have any additional discussions? Okay. Any other discussion? I'll say that.
I have a question.
Yes.
In our information, it says that if we find that the request satisfies the golden factors, the motion should be that the commission finds that the CUP will satisfy the golden factors against the recommendations of staff. Does that really have to be in the motion?
The motion can be made in whichever way that the commissioner that makes the motion wishes to make it in. Sorry, that was kind of lengthy, but a motion can be made. These are suggestions of what a motion could be. I guess at this time I will, and I don't mean to cut you off, Jeanette, you can come back, but as far as I have it, and I've marked up condition 1F, we have amended that slightly to say if required. And this is just what I have written on my paper. We haven't made any amendments yet. Item 3, where I have written to possibly raise to 20 children. We have a condition 8 that says building permit for the existing building would be required. And condition 9 is to comply with all state and local, I don't know if that's ordinances or I wrote down ordinances. Orders.
I think Joni.
You could just say state and local health orders.
Health orders. Okay.
Yeah. And in 10 years or in 2 years, it may not make any difference and no one will know what it means, but at least for right now, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Any other discussions? Okay, seeing none.
Brian?
Yes.
Brian? We also talked about if they were going to go to 20 kids, that they need to provide one additional parking place in the parking lot.
Okay. Does that need to be condition number 10? Or should we wrap it into 3?
Well, yeah, why don't we say, read this. Games, tournaments, practice, training for more than 20 children and any commercial use of the facility is especially prohibited, but there shall be 10 parking spaces provided. I don't like that. It doesn't ring well. Doesn't read well together. I just add make it condition one. What's the letter F and G? H. That the site plan be amended to show 10 parking places, 10 off-street parking places.
We could also put it in 1A where we're talking about parking spaces and say no less than 10.
That works too. That works even easier.
I like that. No less than 10 parking spaces.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, Brian, to approve the conditional use permit with the 10 conditions that we discussed, including the additional parking, and if 1F, adding the language of only if required.
So your motion is to approve with all the additional, with the additional conditions and the parking spaces?
That's correct.
Okay, motion made by Tyler. There any discussions? Or is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made to approve by Tyler, seconded by Josh. Randy or Jolie, please do a roll call.
We're voting on.
For approval
Oh.
or disapproval?
Hang on a second. First of all, did you ever officially close the public hearing?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you did.
Okay. So we don't need a roll call for that. We're voting. Are you voting to approve for the conditions?
Yes, we are.
Okay, then you need a roll call.
Okay,
Jolie, that the motion was made by Tyler and seconded by Josh.
right.
You got that?
Okay.
But since there were two different scenarios suggested, I wanted to make sure that this was for approval.
Yes. It
Yes.
is.
Thank you.
Disapprove. Okay. Tyler Timbrink,
Yes.
Jeanette Johnson,
Yes.
Brian Norbert,
Yes.
Chad Depperschmidt, Jake Fisher, Judy Mueller,
Yes.
Josh Green,
Yes.
with 5 votes in favor, the item is approved and will be considered by the county commission on Monday, February 1st.
Thank you, everyone.
February
We
1st.
appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Those that, we've got a couple little procedural things to take care of before we close out the meeting, but if anybody wishes, you can stay or you can go. But thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do we have any non-agenda planning or zoning items we need to discuss?
I was getting hungry watching Dave Stratton eat his dinner.
I'm kind of hungry.
It looked pretty good. Just that, I think we're going to start the. First of all, let me start that again. We don't have any items for next month. I think we're ready to begin the process of reviewing the zoning ordinance to kind of piece together where we've been and where we're at this point. So we'll plan on about a 1-hour workshop next month when you meet to dive into that process and let you bring you up to speed on what I've been doing while you have been working on the land uses and the limited use conditions of approval for the last 7 or 6 months, whatever it's been. So that's where we'll start next month.
Also the voting.
Oh yeah.
Officers.
Also, we don't have the new appointees or reappointees from the county commission yet. For that reason, we didn't have election of officers at this meeting. We'll probably do that next month. I think it's going to be on their agenda sometime later this month to do that. And when we have a full house, you can vote on who's going to do what, and that'll get us set for the next 10, 11 months. That's
24, I think. Okay. I guess any other planning related, I guess that was planning related. If nobody has anything, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
motion
Roll,
Second.
roll Tide.
Okay, motion made by Judy. Was that seconded by Tyler?
Yes.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
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 Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
See you next month.
We'll be here. Good job, everybody. You get